The snowfall had begun hours earlier, quietly and without force. It wasn't a blizzard. No wind, no scream through the trees. Just snow. Patient, steady, endless. The forest accepted it without protest. Branches thick with old pine needles simply bowed, collecting weight. The trunks stood still, black and vertical like forgotten pillars in an ancient hall. No birds moved, no deer called. Even the wind had gone somewhere else. And in that stillness, a wolf appeared. He did not enter like a predator. He did not break branches or disturb the world. He simply existed, moving through the snowfall like it belonged to him. His fur was mottled with gray and black, not thick like in autumn, but already heavy for the deep cold ahead. His paws pressed into the snow without sound. Each step vanished within seconds beneath new flakes. He walked without urgency, not hunting, not fleeing, not searching, just moving toward something or away from something. In the falling snow, it was impossible to know the difference. The forest around him had long since forgotten human scent. The last boot prints in this part of the woods had faded years ago. Only animals passed through now, and even they moved carefully here, as if the trees carried memory. And so did the wolf. He paused near a low ridge, where the rocks still showed beneath the snow. He stood there for a long time, unmoving. The only motion came from above, flakes piling gently on his back, his muzzle, his ears. If he blinked, the forest didn't notice. The snow made no sound. The trees no longer creaked. Even the river nearby had frozen over, its song now muted beneath inches of new ice. And in that moment, with the wolf beneath the falling snow, and nothing else moving, the forest seemed to pause with him, as if sound itself had forgotten how to echo, as if time had thickened. The world wasn't asleep. It wasn't dead. It was simply watching. And the wolf stood in the center of it all, like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence nature had just whispered, but no longer remembered how to repeat. Morning came quietly, carried on light that filtered through soft snow and thick boughs. The forest did not wake. It unfolded, like something breathing again after holding still too long. The snow had not stopped. It had only changed, from falling in curtains to drifting in strands, slow and vertical, as if the sky had forgotten where gravity pointed. And under this new light, something strange had occurred. There were no tracks. Where the wolf had walked the night before, there should have been a trail. Pressed shapes, long and narrow, leading through the ridge toward the frozen stream. But the snow had covered everything, except one place. Beneath a single pine, an old tree, its branches curled downward like fingers pressed in prayer, the snow remained perfectly untouched. No paw prints, no disturbance. But something about the air there felt altered. Small birds flitted through the high branches, but none descended. A squirrel paused mid-climb, nose lifted toward the air beneath the tree, then reversed course in silence. Even the snow falling there landed differently, slower, lighter, as though unwilling to land too hard. And the forest noticed. The wind didn't pass through this clearing, not fully. It curved around the space, like water around stone, as though even the air remembered the wolf that had stood there hours earlier. Not scent, that was gone. Not heat. The cold had swallowed that quickly, but something more permanent. Presence. A memory pressed into the shape of silence. A jay landed nearby on a broken branch and called once sharp and clear, a testing sound. But the echo didn't return. The space beneath the tree absorbed it. Farther back, near the ridgeline, a fox moved quickly through the brush, its ears flicking toward the pine, but it did not investigate. It moved wide around the place, as though instinct itself had drawn a line. Something had stood there. Not just a creature, but an intention. And now the forest, in its own quiet way, rearranged itself around that moment. No paw prints, no crushed snow, no sound. But the tree knew, and so did the silence. The second night fell thicker than the first. The snowfall had not grown heavier, only deeper in character, as though the snow had begun to learn the forest's silence and mimic it perfectly. Even the moonlight seemed to press downward, dimmed not by cloud, but by the weight of quiet. He returned. The wolf, not as a vision, not as a memory. Alive, fur rimmed in frost, breath slow but certain. And this time, he wasn't drifting. He was hunting. It began near the frozen gully, a depression in the land bordered by collapsed trunks and snow-covered brambles. The air was colder here, the snow thinner, and in the center of that gully, a hare, small, gray, still. The wolf saw it from high ground. No sound passed between them, no snap of twig, no shift of snow, only a glance, and then the chase. He leapt forward, the hare bolted, and in the heartbeat that followed, the forest became a corridor of motion, but not of sound. The snow didn't crunch. The wolf's paws struck without echo. The hare darted through low shrubs, silent as windless breath. The chase was fast, real, physical, urgent, yet nothing broke the quiet. The wolf's lungs filled and emptied in rhythm, but even that was voiceless. Trees passed like pillars in a white cathedral, each one marked by old claw and wind, yet mute to the moment. No birds lifted. No branches quivered from the passing. Even the ice on the stream didn't crack beneath the hare's sudden leap. The wolf followed, gliding, not bounding, his body a dark smear across the pale, unbroken terrain. He cut sharp, adjusted course, used the angles of fallen trunks to gain speed. But nothing could be heard, only motion, only breath visible in short bursts, only snow disturbed, then re-smoothed by fresh flakes. It wasn't natural. The forest should echo with this violence. Predator, prey, chase, flight. But not tonight. Tonight the woods refused to acknowledge the hunt. It ended near the foot of an old cedar, where the hare dove beneath a hollowed root system. Too narrow for the wolf. He slowed, stopped. Steam rolled gently from his nostrils. Still no sound. He stood there for a moment, staring into the shadows beneath the tree, and the forest stared with him. Then, for the first time, the wolf howled. But the sound never came. His mouth opened, jaw curved upward, throat pulled long. Everything in his body acted as if he released a cry, a message, a name, a warning. But there was no echo, no voice, no song, only breath. And when he closed his mouth, the snow began to fall faster, as if the sky was answering a call it hadn't heard. The fourth morning arrived with a hush so complete, even time seemed reluctant to begin. Snow blanketed the forest like a second sky. No edges, no scars, no tracks. The wind had not returned. The sun rose low and pale, casting no warmth, only long, silent shadows. And in a shallow gully nestled between two low ridges, a young doe stood motionless. Her coat was smooth and winter-thick, speckled with frost along the spine. Her breath drifted in soft plumes, slow and rhythmic, fogging the still air. She was alone, but not afraid. Across the gully, the wolf watched her. He stood halfway down the opposite slope, framed by broken saplings and a curtain of snowflakes. He had not approached quietly. The forest no longer rewarded silence with sound. Every step he took vanished instantly beneath the snow. But she had seen him, and she did not run. Her ears twitched once. Her front hoof shifted slightly. Then she held her ground. The gully was shallow, but wide enough for decision. In any other season, the moment would end in panic. A white blur, a chase, an ending. But here, now, in this forest that had forgotten how to echo, no such urgency existed. The wolf took one step forward. The doe didn't flinch. Another step. Snow slid from a low branch above him, but didn't land on his back. It seemed to hover before finally touching the ground without a sound. He was close enough now to see her eyes. They were dark, still, unreadable. Not wild with fear, not soft with trust, but resigned perhaps. Like something had already happened, long before this moment, and they were only acting out what had already been decided. The wolf lowered his head slightly, not aggressive, not submissive, just enough to narrow the space between them. The doe stepped sideways, not away, still facing him. They stood there, unmoving, for long minutes, and then, without signal, the wolf turned. He didn't run, didn't lunge, didn't even sniff the air. He simply turned back the way he came, moving up the slope, into the trees, through the snow. And the doe? She waited a while longer, then bowed her head toward the earth, not to graze, but as if acknowledging something. A rhythm, a law, a pause in whatever held the forest in this unspoken agreement. And when she raised her head again, the snow had started to fall in larger flakes, slow and deliberate, like it had all along been watching too. It had been buried for years. A path once carved by hooves, boots, paws, now softened by time and snow. Only when the wind curled the drifts back slightly and the sun touched it at the right angle did it reveal itself again. A trail, faint, shallow, leading nowhere obvious. The wolf found it by chance. He had not been looking. He was moving without plan, guided more by instinct than intent. But as he passed through a low grove of alder and pine, his paw fell onto something firmer beneath the snow, a line in the earth, compacted differently. He paused, sniffed. No scent remained. No heat, no recent passage. But still, this place remembered. The trail curved gently, like it had been made to accommodate something that once walked slowly. It did not climb steeply or break through rough terrain. It flowed, a route made not for speed, but for return. And so, the wolf followed. As he moved along it, the forest changed. The trees here were older, taller than those in the outer glades, their bark darker, their limbs more skeletal. Moss grew in strange vertical bands. There were no sounds, not even the faint shifting of the snow on high branches. But more than that, there were still no tracks. The wolf's paws pressed down, snow shifted beneath him. And yet, when he passed, the surface restored itself, as though his weight meant nothing, as though the world had decided to erase his presence before it began. The trail narrowed near a split in the rock face. Two stones tilted inward, framing an arch. Beyond it, the land dipped, and the snow there looked thinner, not blown away but melted. That was impossible. And yet, the wolf stepped forward. The trees opened. The snow gave way to patches of bare earth, ringed with steam so subtle it could have been mist. The ground felt soft here, like spring soil, though the air was still freezing. He did not howl. He did not test the air. He only stood, and the wind that had vanished for days passed briefly through the clearing, not cold, not sharp, but aware, as if it recognized this place, as if it had a memory too. The wolf lowered himself slowly, not to sleep, not in surrender, but to rest, just for a moment, to feel the earth, to listen. But the earth said nothing. Still, something pulsed beneath it, faint and slow, like the breath of a story not yet told, but waiting. The first sound came just before dawn. It was small, almost unnoticeable. A soft, brittle crack as a pine branch, heavy with snow, finally surrendered its burden. The ice snapped loose and fell, scattering crystals onto the ground below. The wolf lifted his head. For days, the forest had been silent. Not just quiet, truly silent, as though all sound had been pressed out of the world like breath from lungs. But this was different. The sound didn't vanish. It lingered. He rose slowly, fur stiff with frost, ears tilting toward the trees. Another sound followed, the groan of wood, deep and low, as a frozen trunk shifted in its roots. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakably real. The forest had found its voice again. The wolf stepped forward, snow crunching faintly beneath him. He stopped, looked down. Crunch. The sound repeated. He lifted his paw. The print remained in a clear, defined, unchanged by snow. For the first time since the silence began, the world acknowledged that he had passed. Somewhere behind him, a small bird called, hesitant, like testing its own throat after a long illness. The wolf turned toward it, Nothing in the sound was familiar. Not alarm, not invitation, just noise. Blessed, accidental noise. Something living. Another crack echoed, this time from the ridge. A long, slow sheet of snow gave way and slid down a slope. He heard each part of it, the first fracture, the drop, the final thud, as it landed in soft drifts. The wolf's breath quickened, not from fear, but alertness. The air itself now carried weight again. His movement meant something. The forest was listening, but not in the way it had before. Not with reverence or stillness. Now it was listening with curiosity, as if asking, "Where were we? What did we forget?" He padded slowly toward the rise, his footfalls marked by sound now. Each branch he brushed gave a soft shush, each inhale registered as steam in the cold air. And at the top of the hill he stopped again. Far ahead, beneath a slope of gray-blue light, stood a line of cedar trees. The wind touched them, gently, and their branches rustled. Not much, just enough to remember. The wolf stood tall, nose lifted, tail still. He didn't need to run. He didn't need to speak. Because for the first time in what felt like days, the world was speaking back, and it said, "You are not alone. We heard you. We remember." He returned at twilight. The same clearing. The same crooked pine with downward curved branches. The same hush in the air. But the silence was no longer complete. It was alive now, edged with wind, creaking bark, and the occasional flick of a bird's wing. The forest had remembered how to speak. The wolf moved carefully as though the space demanded respect. Not out of fear, but familiarity. He knew this place. The memory of his own presence lived here. And now for the first time, he came to see if the forest had truly remembered him. And it had. The snow beneath the pine was marked, a single paw print, then another, and another. Not recent, not sharp, but clear enough. His. He circled the space slowly. The tracks didn't vanish. The snow no longer refused memory. It accepted it now, held it carefully like something sacred. The forest had once tried to forget him. Now it did not. Above him, the wind shifted through the branches, shaking loose, dry needles that fell like brittle rain. They landed on his back, clung briefly to the frost-laced fur, then melted into his warmth. Behind him, across the ridgeline, the trees swayed with sound. Creaks, groans, faint rustlings. Life. The wolf sat. He didn't howl. He didn't need to. His presence was no longer erased. His steps were no longer denied. The trail behind him remained visible, real, even as snow continued to fall gently through the open sky. In this one still place, the forest had made a decision to listen, to witness, to remember. And the wolf, for the first time in days, closed his eyes. Not in exhaustion, but in peace, because the silence was over. The snow still fell, but it fell around his memory, not over it. And when he rose again, his footsteps stayed.